Well, good morning, everybody. Very pleased to be with you. Couple of minutes to review the basics of the DiSC model at Wiley. Um, as you may know, the DiSC model is about communication preference, even though a lot of people are talking about personality style. Well, let's be clear. It's more about how do I prefer to communicate, how to adapt to others after diagnosing how they prefer to communicate. So three steps: who am I, how to diagnose others, and how to adapt to others in terms of communication preference. So it's a framework, of course, understanding human behavior and improving communication, teamwork, and leadership effectiveness. Four primary personality dimension and based on the Marston-Moulton model. Um, Talking about self, there's so many selfies nowadays, but so little knowledge of self. And that's the first thing to think about is who am I in different situations. You may remember that this gentleman called Socrates a long time ago said "Gnotis seoton," which means know yourself, which was the path to more wisdom. Now, um, just to be sure we talk about the same thing, we all have genetic traits called DNA. Around that, based on those DNA and based on education and beliefs and values, we may develop some personality traits. And some tools are trying to help us to better understand the basic fundamental personality traits that we may have. One of them, well known, is called the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator from Jung or Jung, some of Jung people. And then we have the surface traits, are more visible from the outside. There's a couple of sometimes called social style model. DiSC is one of the social style model. There are several, but DiSC, the one from Wiley with a little I, is one of the model trying to take into consideration, depending on the environment, depending on the situation, how do I behave in those situations? Which means that if it's complicated to change my DNA, it's quite impossible. It's a lot more work to change my basic personality. Adapting behaviors depending on the situation is something I can do. That's where DiSC can be a very interesting framework to understand that. William Moulton Marston, you can find, of course, on the internet quite quickly. This psychologist from the US was the one who wrote the first book called Emotions of Normal People, which later gave the idea of the DiSC model. By the way, he also was the one to invent the polygraph, the lie detector, and also to create Wonder Woman as a sign of the of empowering women in general and more specifically in life. The two dimensions of the Marston-Moulton model are based on preferences and tendencies, not our skill or ability, of course. The vertical one is, do we have people who are more fast-paced or outspoken or cautious and reflective? The horizontal one is questioning and skeptical, accepting and warm. When you combine both of them, as you may remember, we have the DiSC model with those four basic letters, D, I, S, and C, each of them meaning something. But the whole idea here is to say the dominant people, they tend to be more direct, forceful, outspoken. So combining the vertical and the horizontal dimension. High influence. They also have their own preferences in terms of acting and communicating. Steadiness, as you may see, gentle, accommodating, patient, and also conscientiousness, more thoughtful, analytical, reserved, and precise. So four basic important communication preferences. Few things to add, and quite important to understand. We have more than four. There are 12, in fact. So we're not talking about four letter only. We're talking about 12. Each of them having this little nuance, depending where you are close to one of another of those border. And you see for each of them priorities, motivation, fears, limitation, needs, and things like that. So we talk about the 12 style in the DiSC model. Couple of things to add. As again, this is kind of a refresh about the DiSC model that you probably already know, but just to be sure we're on the same page. The cornerstones principle are it's a blended model, which means what? All DiSC style and priorities are equally valuable, and everyone is a blend of all four style. So it would be completely not logical to say you are a D, you're an I, you're as we're not talking in letter. By the way, we're not talking in color as well, because colors are very, very cultural linked, because the green in China is not the same meaning as the green in the US, of course, or red. So we're not talking in colors because it put people in box like pigeonhole. We're talking in letter D. When even though talking is a D, which is the tendency, the style, the preference is big D, small I, or DC. So it's a blended thing. Situational means what? The work style is also influenced by plenty of other factors, life experience, education, and maturity. And we'll see later, by the way, we don't have only one DiSC style. It depends on the situation, which is make it very, very dynamic. And also the idea of the stretch, it's helpful to think the style is kind of your comfort zone. And the whole idea is to get out of your comfort zone, depending on, and if it's the need to do that. To get out of the comfort zone, again, who am I? What are the preferences of the person in front of me? The person can be a customer, a team member, a partner, a team. It's just somebody else. How can I better diagnose, understand what are your preference, what are my preference? And the next step, of course, is to get out of my comfort zone and to adapt, to match, to communicate the way you like to be talked to. So, a couple of very important cornerstone principles. Having said that, another very important thing to remember, if needed, is that where are those preferences coming from? Because we see the behavior on the outside, but what's the drive? What's the engine? What's the energy coming from? And it has been said, and this is of course less visible, that people who are on the top of this vertical axis tend to perceive themselves as more powerful than the environment, while on the other side they tend to perceive themselves less powerful than the environment. And on the horizontal axis, the people on the more questioning, they tend to perceive the environment as unfavorable. What could go wrong? What's between the line? What could be the backup plan? While on the other side, accommodating people tend to perceive the environment as more favorable. Two things. Of course, if I'm perceiving myself as more powerful than the environment, who may be risky or unfavorable, my behavior, my way to react or to prepare myself or to react is of course more dominant. So you see those dominant behavior are coming from those two, I would say, engine, those two energy flow, based on those two pre-belief or preconception about the environment. The second thing is that, of course, it's environment related, which means that if I'm with my friend, my family, my old good friend from school, the environment may be completely favorable. While if I'm now negotiating or buying or selling, maybe think that this can be risky. So in other words, my DiSC preference, not only one but 12, no one with one letter, one color, no, it depends on, and also based on the environment. And that's why sometimes we may have some participants think, I don't see myself the same way at home if I think about myself. DiSC, usually we ask people to think about themselves in their work situation today, acknowledging that it may change in another situation. The good news, it may also change over time. My DiSC profile may be different in 1 or 2 years from now, based on the environment or based on the work I've been doing on myself, knowledge of self, knowledge of others, and adapting. So the dot is where am I on that DiSC map? The dot is, of course, the result of the questionnaire, as you know, and the dot tells a story. It tells me a little bit about myself. I may agree or disagree with some part of the story, which will be part, by the way, of the debriefing, of the coaching, of the training about this. But the dot also, depending if it's slight, moderate, or strong on the edge, is indicating my inclination. If I'm on the edge, I have a strong inclination to demonstrate the behavior of that specific style in that situation. So it also gives an idea about how visible I am with that style in that situation. We're talking about priorities, as you may see on the outside. We have, for example, this gentleman here are 3 priorities, as you may see. By the way, it's a blended. It's not only one letter, and not even a color, of course, but one letter. It's more than one. We have 3 priorities. This gentleman here, or this respondent, get 3 priorities. We also have the idea of the shading, even more than 3, even 4 in that specific case. That's somebody who is demonstrating or preferring accuracy, stability, and support, and if needed, sometimes action. So I may access to other priorities in my way of communicating, of working. Talking about the priorities, as you know, we have several profiles. One is called the workplace profile, which is kind of the basic profile. The second one with the priorities, you see the priorities will change when it comes to the management one. There are other priorities when I'm as a manager, thinking about directing, delegating. Who am I as a manager? What are the preferences of my direct report and how to adapt in my management role? Same with the emotional intelligence. We have priorities, sometimes called mindset. Three other profiles: the sales profile as a salesperson, priorities of the purchaser, and how to adapt in a sales communication. You see the priorities around the circle are changing as well. Conflict management and leadership. So those priorities may help us to be more accurate when it comes to helping people understand their profile. So DiSC in practice, we have improved communication, team building, conflict resolution, leadership development. Few words about how to, as a remember, again, as a refresh, the classic questionnaire, you go on your Epic platform, as you may see here, ask to create a new report, select the profile, management, workplace, leadership, send invite, view, print, and send the completed reports to the participant. And then your work start to train, to coach, to help them understand their profile. There are other ways to do it, and the other one is called the Catalyst platform. That's a major change. It's another option, which is more the learner platform. As you may see, there are a few things then: comparison report, team mapping, even some e-learning and activities. We'll cover that, and we'll do a guided tour of this one on September 19 at 1 o'clock, also in Zoom. And there's also a third thing we'll review together. It's called the practitioner resources, which is a wonderful thing. Which may help us also as a facilitator to get all the material, all the slides, all the video in one place for all the different profiles. We'll do a guided tour of that on October 3rd at 1 o'clock p.m. also with Zoom. Good talking to you, and hope this was a quite quick refresh. Don't hesitate to drop a mail or call if you need more, and to also share your experience, your suggestions, and your ideas about this wonderful tool to help us DiSC.